Now, I know that I keep talking about the next generation of consoles. I talk about them on our podcast, HardReset, basically every week. I talked about them last week on LegalSpeak. Now, I really just won't shut up about the new consoles, but get used to it because this week really isn't going to be any different. Now, a recent poll shows that an overwhelming majority of current generation players are planning on purchasing a PlayStation 5 as opposed to an Xbox Series X. Personally, I plan on buying both because I don't really care what plastic box full of silicone is powering my games. I just kind of want to play the games. But if I were forcing myself to choose, I really think that Microsoft has convinced me that this coming generation I'll be primarily playing Xbox. And more importantly, they're making what seems to be a much more concerted effort to transform what the term Xbox actually means, and inherently how we think about video games and what we expect from our consoles moving forward. Welcome everyone. Welcome back to LegalSpeak, a ColdNorth production. I'm the Law Morris, and this is the video essay series in which I get to talk about the games I've been playing and what I think of the medium as a whole. Now, this week isn't going to be a PS5 versus Xbox Series X type of video. It's just going to be an exploration of what Microsoft has done to convince me that Xbox is the place to play, and why I think that decision will last longer than just this coming generation. Quick disclaimer before we get started. Like I mentioned at the top, I'm planning on buying both the Xbox and the PS5 on day one.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
I've already put away roughly $500 for each console.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money.
So when they go up for pre-order, I'll put my money down in both camps and play games indiscriminately. This video is in no way meant to stoke the flames of the console wars. It's just my observing things that Microsoft is doing that Sony isn't that are important to me. So can we all please agree to not spit venom at each other defending the billion-dollar companies that don't give two shits about us as individuals? Xbox isn't a part of my identity, and neither is PlayStation.
It defines who I am.
We're not saying you have... What?
Alright, so now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the Xbox. For every single generational console launch that I can remember, almost all consoles have utilized the same standard strategy, and that's for good reason. It works. The simple, straightforward formula involves three ingredients. First, you gotta come to market with significantly more powerful hardware than the previous generation's offerings. Second, you gotta have games. Whether they're first party or third party, you gotta make sure that there's something great to play, because if the PS Vita taught us anything, it's that the best hardware in the world can't ever make up for not having great software to go with it. And third, and this one is a more recent development, you've gotta have great online services. Sony struggled throughout the entirety of the PlayStation 3. Because while Xbox Live was a teenager starting to build some muscle mass and figure out what was going on downstairs, PlayStation Network was just a baby shit pissing their diaper. And just to be especially clear, when I say the formula is simple, I mean conceptually. It's not difficult to identify what makes a great console, but even the simplest formula in the world can still be difficult to execute on. Now, both Microsoft and Sony are utilizing this approach. Both the Series X and the PS5 are significantly more powerful than even their half-step predecessors, the Xbox One X and the PS4 Pro. They're both doing their best to come with big games that will draw people to their consoles. Sony is doing a much better job with this one in my opinion. And they're both undoubtedly working to evolve their online services. But while Sony looks to be perfecting a tried and true comfort dish, Microsoft is bringing in new ingredients that will truly change what the Xbox plate has to offer. The Netflix of gaming is a term that has been tossed around for several years now. And even before Game Pass, it was seen as sort of a holy grail of video games. Well, Microsoft finally made it happen, and it's basically as good as we all thought it would be. Honestly, Microsoft has done a better job making the Netflix of gaming than Netflix has done making the Netflix of movies. Game Pass is constantly adding major third-party titles like Grand Theft Auto 5, Red Dead Redemption 2, Soul Calibur 6, Devil May Cry 5. Those are really just the ones that I could pull off the top of my head. And in addition to that, every single Microsoft first-party game is added to Game Pass on day one. By offering a monthly subscription service, Microsoft has created something that's a great deal for people like, well, you and me, because we end up spending significantly less money on games every year. And in turn, we evangelize the service and Microsoft gets more money from those people who are buying, well, really just 1 or 2 games on sale by just paying a low monthly price. It kind of relates back to last week's video and the idea of everyone paying a little bit more for things to be better overall. At the end of the day, Game Pass is a service that, while yes, Sony does have a competing service in PS Now, which I am also a big fan of, by the way, you can see a video that I've made about it, the insane value offered in Game Pass makes it so casual gamers don't really have to buy games if they don't want to. The second, and in my opinion, more exciting way Microsoft is transforming the Xbox platform is in preservation. Microsoft has been very forthcoming with their intention for every game that works on Xbox One X to work on the Series X on day one. Now that means that I can take a disc that was originally purchased in 2001 and put it in my Series X, and it'll just work without missing a beat. I don't know about you guys, but to me, that's a really big deal. While Microsoft may not have explicitly said it, they have hinted at the idea that Xbox games moving forward will all be forward compatible with whatever Xboxes come in the future. Video games are a medium that are in their relative infancy, and as a result of the dangerous combination of both being a new medium and an extremely profitable one, there really aren't many companies that are focused on preserving what's come before. They're all focused on the next big payday. Now, as a society, we preserve all kinds of art. We've made an organized, government-funded effort to preserve books, film, paintings, really basically any kind of art that you can think of. For a myriad of good reasons, almost all art is worth preserving. And at this point, video games are undoubtedly art. Microsoft's focus on the preservation of video games, or at least the video games that have come to the Xbox platform, is a commitment to backwards compatibility that collectors like myself have been waiting for basically all our lives. Now, with regards to the PlayStation 5 though, it's not like it looks like it's going to be a bad console by any stretch of the imagination. Sony has experimented with backwards compatibility in the past. The PS2 was backwards compatible with all PlayStation 1 games. Early on in the PlayStation 3, every console had PS2 hardware built into the console, but that was cut just a few years in as a cost-saving measure. The PS4 is kind of faked backwards compatibility with PlayStation 3 games by streaming them through PlayStation Now, but it didn't feature any real backwards compatibility. And the PlayStation 5 is said to be backwards compatible with, quote, most of the most popular PS4 games. Now, recently, I've accepted that the PlayStation 4 has the best library of games of all time, and to see that library left behind, forever stranded on the PlayStation 4, well, that would be tragic. And of course, this won't be the case, as the vast majority of them will be playable on the PlayStation 5. But what about after that? Will they still work on the PlayStation 6 or the PS7? Sure, we might not be playing games that are 1 or 2 or even 3 generations old regularly, but the importance of preserving those games cannot be overstated. Sony is making another PlayStation. At the end of the day, that's all the PlayStation 5 looks to be, is just another PlayStation. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm really excited about that, and if Sony can manage to just kind of keep the good times of the PS4 rolling with the PS5, I'll be thrilled. But without that commitment to the preservation of games that Microsoft is showing, I'll be playing PlayStation exclusively for its exclusives. Ever since I was a kid, I've always loved the idea of an old record collection. Dozens or hundreds of records amassed over years of collecting, all lined up next to each other on a shelf or in milk crates, that really stand as a physical manifestation of their owner's journey through a hobby that clearly means the world to them. I've been collecting physical copies of video games for several years now. Some of the games in my collection date as far back as my day one copy of Luigi's Mansion, or the copy of Majora's Mask that my sister got for her 12th birthday just days after its release. I've been collecting with the idea that one day my collection of games will be more akin to those old record collections, a snapshot of me and my journey through video games over the years. But unlike old records, we end up locked out of those games by hardware because finding a working record player is much easier than finding a working console from 30 years ago. Microsoft's commitment to Xbox games working on all future iterations of Xbox means that someday my kid will be able to pull a game 2 or 3 times his or her age off the shelf, ask me about it, and then be able to experience it in whatever the modern Xbox is at the time. And that's really the kind of future that I want to live in. So until Sony steps up their preservation effort, I'll be buying and playing as many Xbox games as possible, and really only playing Team Blue when there's no green version available. So which console are you planning on buying, and what made you choose that one? Let me know in the comments down below. And while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe for a new video every week. You can see everything we do, including both of our podcasts, all in one spot over at ColdNorthPro.com. I'll be back next week talking about something else entirely, so until then, just go play some games.